class. Let's get started with King Arthur. Pause this music. And I know that this was kind of a late notice that this was going to be a live reading. I did the introduction this morning and read the introduction and the prologue, and that will be uploaded soon, and I will share that. So it'll be here on the YouTube channel, but then it will also be on Canvas as well. So we're just going to jump into chapters 1 through 6. But if you want the introduction to King Arthur and to follow along with me as I read the introduction and the prologue, you can do that later. And I also put in that video 11 questions that you might be tested on for your study questions. I want to get you guys prepared for the study questions, and so I'll let you know some questions that you might be tested on. Hey Adriana, glad you're here. Glad to have one of you guys join us. It's gonna be awesome. I hope you're excited to read along with me and follow along. Those that are watching this live, I'm glad to have you here. We will do live lessons. Please let me know if you like the pre-recorded lessons or if you like more of these live lessons. I have a new schedule this quarter, and so I'm trying to figure out everything, but I do want to know what helps you guys learn the material and what you enjoy most, because I know it's hard to be at home and to do so much schoolwork at home, and so whatever I can do to make it the best, please let me know. We are going to get started with King Arthur, all right? So chapter 1, the birth of Arthur. It's been a while since I've done a live lesson, so Adriana, please let me know if you can't hear me. I guess if you can't hear me, you're not going to be able to let me know. Well, I guess you let me know in the chat, but if there anything isn't working so well, please let me know, Adriana, since you are the only one here at the moment. Okay, glad to have you here. Yeah, but it's been a while, so this could be a little rusty. But let's get started with the birth of Arthur. The secret of the birth of Arthur, King of Britain, is hidden from us like the secret of his end. Although he was, as Merlin foretold, heir to Uther, no one can prove who his parents were. Thus, who say he was a man like other men tell the story thus. Glad you can hear me, Adriana. Thanks for letting me know. When Uther was Pendragon, and as we learned in the introduction and the prologue, is Pendragon means king, he fought continually against the invaders. One of his own subjects fought against him as well, the Duke of Cornwall. Uther sent messages to the Duke asking him to come to his court and make peace. He came and brought with him his wife, Igraine, who was both beautiful and wise. The king and the Duke made peace. There were feasts and sports and merrymaking, and the king, who was not married, fell in love with Igraine. As soon as she realized this, she said to the Duke, "Husband, take me away from here at once, and let us ride all night to our own castle." They did so, and the king prepared to make war on them again. The Duke of Cornwall manned his 2 chief castles and sent Igraine to one called Tintagel, while he himself defended Terrabil, which was famous for its secret doors and posterns in and out. So let's go forward a little quick and look at these 2 vocabulary words, these 2 bolded words. A postern is a private door or gate, and then we're about to learn about what laid siege means. We're about to read about laid siege, and so let's learn what it means. To surround a city or fortress with an army and attack. So as we go back, sorry, that came up. So it was famous for its gates, the posterns, its gates in and out, and they're about to lay siege to Terrabil. So Uther laid siege to Terrabil, but he could make no headway, and from anger and love of Igraine he fell sick. Then Sir Ulfius, one of Uther's knights, went to ask Merlin for help in curing him. Here's a little picture of Uther when he was the king, or Pendragon. Hey Caden, glad you made it. Glad to have you here. Alright, so he met the wizard dressed as a beggar on the road. Merlin told him that he would give the king all that he wished for if in return he would grant a wish of Merlin's. When they returned to court and told the king this, the king swore to do as Merlin told him. Merlin then said that when he married Igraine, he would have a child, and he must give it to Merlin to bring up. He promised that it would be for the good of the child. Uther agreed, and Merlin then told him what to do to win Igraine. That day, the king left the siege of Terrabil, leaving some of his army encamped there, and rode towards Tintagel. The duke's spies told him of the king's departure, and the same night the duke led an attacking party out of one of the posterns, one of the gates. Remember, we just learned what postern was. And in the fighting, the duke was killed. The news was brought the next day to the king, who was outside Igraine's castle at Tintagel. Then all the barons asked him to make peace with the lady Igraine. The king asked Sir Ulfius to take messages of goodwill to her, and at last Sir Ulfius persuaded Igraine to meet the king. Uther asked her to be his queen, and they were married the next morning. In time, a son was born to them. Merlin came to Uther and reminded him of his promise. Heavy-hearted, the king kept his word. Then Merlin said, I know a lord of yours who is a very true man and faithful. His name is Sir Ector, and he shall take care of your child. Let the child be delivered to me at yonder postern, or at the gate, unchristened. And here's a bolded word. What does unchristened mean? Well, if we look down, it says unchristened means without baptism, a ceremony of pouring water on someone joining the church to symbolize the cleansing of the soul. So Sir Ector wanted the child unbaptized. All right, continue to read. The king ordered 2 knights and 2 ladies to take the child wrapped in a cloth of gold to the postern gate and give him to an unknown poor man who would be waiting. This was Merlin in disguise. He took the child, and what he did then no one knows. But in time he brought him to Sir Ector, and there summoned a priest, and had the child baptized and named Arthur. 2 years after this event, the king fell ill. Merlin summoned all the lords together and said in a loud voice, Sir, after your days are done, shall your son Arthur be king of this realm? The king answered, I give him my blessing. Tell him that he must claim the crown or lose my blessing. Then he died, and no one knew who his son Arthur was or where he was, except Merlin, who kept silent. Hey, Caden. All right, so that was chapter 1, and something that I wanted to try, and let me know how you like. I'm going to remove my camera and see if that helps us all stay focused. So let me know, those that are here live in the comments, and those that are watching or in the chat, and those that are watching the replay, let me know either in Canvas or in the comments below if you prefer the cam or not the cam. I don't want to be a distraction, and so whatever helps us and helps you stay focused on the story, that's what I want to do. All right, I'm gonna grab a quick drink really quick. All right, and now let's jump into chapter 2. The Sword and the Stone. After the death of Uther Pendragon, there was no true king in Britain. No one knew but Merlin knew if Arthur really existed. Sorry, I gotta pause really quick. Thanks, Caden. Caden said I was the best teacher he's had in school. I really appreciate it. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to continue to make this year awesome. You guys are the best. All right, so let me start over. The Sword and the Stone. After the death of Uther Pendragon, there was no true king in Britain. No one but Merlin knew if Arthur really existed or where he was. The lords fought each other, and each tried to make himself king. They built castles in which they themselves were safe, but from which they rode out to rob farmers and anyone who had any wealth. They tortured those who would not say where their wealth was hidden. Great was the misery of Britain. Cries went up for a true king who would protect the poor and keep justice for every man. When Merlin knew that the time had come, he went to the Archbishop of Canterbury and said that if he would call the leading men to London at Christmas time, a miracle would prove who was the rightful king of Britain. So the Archbishop summoned all the chief men of the kingdom to London at Christmas. On Christmas Day they went to church. When they came out, they found in the churchyard a square marble stone, in the middle of which was an anvil. All right, let's scroll forward really quick. Anvil is a heavy block on which a blacksmith shapes metal by hammering. So in the middle of the churchyard was an anvil, and into the anvil was thrust a sword. All right, one second. Looking at the chat, Adriana says, "It is so better without you, because I would read it." So you like me not, you don't like, so you like the cam not being shown, or do you like to see the cam? I'm just not totally for sure what you're saying. All right, so the stone gripped the naked sword by the point, and on the blade was written in gold letters. Sorry, I'm right here at the bottom. Oh, now that thing popped up. I'm right here. Oh, dang it. All right. Sorry, guys. The stone gripped the naked sword by the point, and on the blade was written in gold letters, "Whoever pulls out this sword from this stone and anvil is the rightful king of the Logres." Here was the miracle foretold by Merlin. Each lord tried to pull it out, and all failed. Nobody could move it. News of the miracle was hurriedly told to all the knights. A tournament was announced for New Year's Day, when the knights were each invited to try to pull out the sword. All the great lords met again on New Year's Day. Among them was Sir Ector, who brought his son Sir Kay, who had been made a knight at the previous Halloween. Hey, Halloween's coming up. It's awesome that we're reading this right now. With them rode his younger brother Arthur, who was only 15 years old. He was not a knight and had no importance at all, nor was he really Kay's brother, though no one but Sir Ector and Merlin knew this. He did not know it himself. After the church service, they all rode in a merry company to the tournament field. Sir Kay suddenly realized that he had left his sword behind in his lodgings. There was no time for him to go back, for he was due to take part in the young knights' tournament. So he asked Arthur to go back for him. Arthur went as fast as he could to their lodgings. But everyone had gone to see the fighting, and the house was locked. Arthur was angry and said, "I will ride to the churchyard and take the sword and the stone, for my brother shall not be without a sword this day." He found no one at the churchyard, for everyone had gone to see the tournament. So he took the sword by the hilt and gave it a light, quick pull. All right, one second. Let's look at hilt. The hilt is the handle of a sword. So Arthur grabbed the sword by the handle. And I'm going to pause really quick. It says, Adriana says you like the no cam. Okay, it's good to know. Again, if you guys like the cam or no cam, please let me know. And then Adriana, I like that you're trying to help out Caden, say that he left the math book. But let's try to keep all the chat and comments while we're reading focused on either my questions or on the story itself, okay? Once we're done, I don't mind you telling Caden where his book up, but I'd really appreciate if all comments while we're reading are focused on the story, because those that watch the replay can see the comments, and if comments are not focused on the book, it might distract others as well. Again, I really appreciate that you're trying to help out Caden, but let's just keep the comments in the chat focused on either my questions or the story, all right? Okay, so we just read that Arthur is going to grab the sword for his brother, and he's going to the sword that is in the anvil in the middle of the churchyard, and right at this point, he's grabbing the sword by the handle or the hilt, and he's giving it a light, quick pull. And the sword came out. He jumped onto his horse, rode to the tournament field, and gave Kay the sword. Now Kay, being a knight, knew the meaning of the sword and the stone. He recognized it at once. He unwisely thought he could deceive others about how it came out. About how he came by it. He went to his father and said, "Sir, look, here is the sword of the stone, and so I must be the king in this land." Sir Ector was amazed, but he was a wise man, and he immediately took Kay and Arthur and went back to the church. He told Kay to swear how he came by the sword. Kay was frightened now, and he said, "Sir, by my brother Arthur, for he brought it to me." Sir Ector looked at the young Arthur, remembering how strangely Merlin had brought him in secret as a newborn baby, told him to bring him up as his own son, and promised that in time Merlin would reveal who the child truly was. "How did you get the sword?" said Sir Ector slowly to Arthur, standing by the altar in the quiet church. Arthur told him exactly what he had done. "Now," said Sir Ector to Arthur, "as I understand, you must be king of this land." "I," said Arthur, astonished. "How can that be?" "Sir," said Sir Ector, using the title for the first time, "because God will have it so, for no man could have pulled out this sword unless he was the rightful king of this land. Now let me see whether you can put the sword back as it was and pull it out again." "That is quite easy," said Arthur, and they all went outside into the frosty churchyard. There stood the white stone with the anvil wedged in the top, but no sword was in the anvil. Arthur went up to it and thrust the sword back into its slit, which gripped the blade hard. Sir Ector tried to pull it out to see that there was no trick. He could not move it at all. "Now you try," said Sir Ector to Sir Kay, and Sir Kay pulled with all his might, but could not move it. "Now you shall try," Sir Ector said to Arthur. "Very well," said Arthur, and he pulled it out easily. Here's a little picture of Arthur pulling the sword out very quickly, and then, as you can tell, here's the anvil that we learned about. Sir Ector and Sir Kay knelt down before Arthur. "My dear father and brother," said the boy, "why do you kneel to me?" Then Sir Ector told him that he was not his own son, but that Merlin had brought him as a baby to be brought up as his son in his household. "Sir," said Sir Ector again, I will ask no more of you, but that you will make my son, your foster brother, Sir Kay, steward in charge of your lands." Arthur answered, "That shall be done, and no other man shall have the office while he and I live." Then they went to the archbishop and told him what had happened. At the end of the New Year's tournament, on the Epiphany, all the knights tried the sword and none could move it. All right, let's scroll forward and look at what Epiphany means. Epiphany, meaning January 6th, the 12th day after the birth of Jesus, when the three wise men found him. So on that day, the other knights tried to pull the sword out and couldn't move it. All right, at the very bottom, the last sentence starting with, Then Arthur, who was not even a knight, drew it out. It was decided at last. Arthur took the sword in both hands and laid it on the altar where the archbishop was standing. Then he knelt down, and the best knight present was chosen to come forward and make him knight. After that, the archbishop set on his head the crown of Britain, and wearing it, Arthur swore the king's oath to give justice to all men, high and low, all the days of his life. The people threw up their caps and shouted because a true king had come at last to punish the wicked and defend the poor. But many of the great lords were not pleased and refused to have a boy of 15 of unknown parents as king over them. They resisted so strongly that it was not until the summer feast of Pentecost that Arthur was acknowledged as the true king. It is really cool that no one could pull out the sword except for Arthur. All right, let's scroll forward really quick and learn what Pentecost means, because that word was bolted. And maybe some of you guys already know. Pentecost is the 7th Sunday after Easter, also called Whit Sunday, when the Roman Catholic Church commemorates the gift of the Holy Spirit to Jesus' apostles. So no one really recognized or acknowledged Arthur was the true king until Pentecost. All right, continue to read, starting right here. The king took those who were not to be trusted away from their posts. Arthur knew that a peaceful reign did not lie ahead of him. There were fierce raiders from over the seas, hostile British lords in strong castles, and even treacherous men among his advisors. A heavy task lay before him in ruling the kingdom rightly, or even in keeping his throne at all. Thanks. So that was a cool chapter. We learned that there was the tournament of the knights, and that Arthur pulled out the sword and became the rightful king of the land. And that we learned that Arthur doesn't really know who his real father was, that Sir Ector was just put in charge of Arthur from Merlin. Anything else that stood out to you guys during that chapter? You can let me know in the chat right now. If not, we will continue to read chapter 3. We got a few more chapters. We're going to read chapters 1 through 6. And it's awesome to have you, Adriana, and Katie in here. But if you guys start losing track, and those that are watching this video, if you start, zoning out or losing focus, you guys can come back to this video and watch it and read it later, or you can read it on your own. I'm just doing that for those that maybe struggle with reading or enjoy following along. It's not necessary for you guys to watch these videos, but it's awesome to have you here live, and I hope you do enjoy reading along with me if you are watching these videos. Okay, let's continue to read. Chapter 3, The Sword in the Lake. A few weeks after Arthur was made king, he went out riding early one morning. He carried only a light sword, not the one that he had pulled from the stone. That sword still lay on the altar where he had placed it at his coronation, so when he became king. As he rode down a woodland path, he came upon the wizard Merlin, being attacked by 3 men. When they saw a knight on horseback bearing down on them, they ran away. "O Merlin," said Arthur, "if I had not been here, you would have been killed in spite of all your crafts." "No," said Merlin, "I could have saved myself if I had wanted to. You are more near death than I am." As they went on, the track led to a fountain. Blocking the way was a knight in black, sitting in a chair. All right, we're about to learn about the Black Knight, right? And you're going to be quizzed about this, so be paying attention. So the knight was close to the fountain. Continue to read, starting with, he refused. He refused to let them pass without fighting him, and said it was his custom. "Anyone who does not like my custom can alter it if he can." "I will alter it," said Arthur. So the knight got on his horse, and they took their spears and charged each other. Each spear shattered in splinters on each shield. They leaped off their horses and fell upon each other with their swords. The blows rang on their armor and ripped great gashes through the leather joints so that their blood ran out. As they struggled back and forth and trampled ground became stained with blood. At last King Arthur struck such a blow that his sword broke in two. The knight cried out that Arthur must yield. Looks like here's a little picture. It's kind of hard to see, but in your book it's probably bigger. This fight that's going on. "I would rather die than yield to you as beaten," said King Arthur, and he sprang at the knight and took him by the middle and threw him down. But the knight was a much heavier man than Arthur, and he wrestled so fiercely that he got Arthur down under him and held him helpless. As he raised his dagger to kill the king, Merlin cast a spell over him, and he fell into a deep sleep. Merlin helped Arthur up, mounted the knight's horse, and they rode away to have Arthur's wounds dressed. The king was angry because he thought Merlin had beaten the knight, who had fought fairly and bravely by using a spell. "I told you what a knight he was," answered Merlin. "You would have been killed if I had not been there. There is no mightier knight than he, and after this he shall do you good service. His name is Pellinore, and he shall have 2 sons whose names will be Percival of Wales and Lamorc of Wales. He will tell you the name of the son of your own sister, who shall cause the destruction of all this kingdom." Looks like Merlin just gave another prophecy. This was an evil prophecy, but Arthur was too young to be worried over a child who was not yet born. As they rode, the king said, "I have no sword." "Never mind," answered Merlin. "Near here is a sword that shall be yours." So they rode until they came to a lake, in the middle of which Arthur saw a sight as strange as the marble stone and anvil in the churchyard. Rising out of the water was an arm, clothed in soft white silk, holding a sword in its hand. "Look," said Merlin, "there is a sword I spoke of." As they gazed, they saw a boat moving across the water with a damsel in it. All right, what is a damsel? A damsel is a young, unmarried woman. "That is the lady of the lake," said Merlin, "and under that lake is a rock. Inside that rock is as fair a place as any on earth, and richly kept. This damsel is coming to you, so speak well to her, and she will give you the sword." The boat drew to land, and the lady greeted Arthur, who returned her greeting. "Damsel," he said, "what sword is that yonder arm holds above the water? I wish it were mine, for I have no sword." "Sir Arthur King," she answered, "that sword is mine, and if you will give me a gift when I ask for it, you shall have it." Arthur knew that Merlin would have warned him if the lady had been an enemy, so he replied, "By my faith, I will give you whatever gift you shall ask." Ooh, that's a bold promise to make, don't you think? All right, continue to read. "Very well," she said. "Get into the boat and row to the sword. Take it, and the scabbard will with you, and I will ask for my gift when I see my time." A scabbard is a sleeve for holding a sword. Okay, so continue to read. So Arthur and Merlin got off their horses, tied them to the 2 trees, and went into the boat. They rowed across the lake to the mysterious arm, and when they reached it, Arthur took the sword by the hilt. meaning the handle. The hand let go, and the arm sank back under the still water. They rowed straight back to the shore. The lady of the lake had disappeared. The king sprang out of the boat and, once safely on shore, examined the sword and saw how magnificent it was. Its name, Excalibur, was carved into the blade, and below it on one side was written, "Take me," and on the other side, "Cast me away." It's kind of interesting. Then they rowed back to the court in Caerleon. Here's a picture of what we just read, and again, it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but in your book, it's bigger. You can see the arm coming out of the water, and the sword, Excalibur, and at the very top, you can see the handle where King Arthur grabbed it. Arthur's friends were very thankful to see him, for no one had known what had happened to him. He told them all his adventures, and they were amazed that he risked his life single-handed. But all the true knights were proud to serve under such a leader, who would put himself in danger like any ordinary knight. Awesome. Okay, we're in chapter 4 now. 3 more chapters for today. Chapter 4, Sir Balin and the Hallows. There were strange and mysterious things in Britain in King Arthur's day. These things were called the Hallows. The chief of them was the cup of which Jesus drank at the Last Supper with his disciples, and in which blood was caught from his wounds on the cross. Okay, the Last Supper. The Last Supper is Jesus' last meal with his disciples when he explained that he was about to die for the sins of the world. The second was the lance which his side was pierced. The cup was called the Holy Grail. People said it had been brought to Britain by Joseph of Arimathea after Jesus was crucified. And that's another vocabulary word. Crucify means to kill a man by nailing him to a cross. So Joseph had been to Britain before. It is said that he was the uncle of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and that he made his living in the tin trade. The fame of these things spread over Europe, and people came from many countries to see the Holy Grail. But after Joseph's death, people tried to steal the cup because they thought they could make it work magic for them, and so true lovers of the Grail hid it and kept it secret. Everyone knew of it, but no one was sure where it was. Sometimes it would appear on the altar during a service and then disappear. Sometimes it appeared in a castle hall after dinner, or to a good man while he prayed. Sometimes the lance was seen with it, its point always flaming. Sometimes angels were seen with the Hallows, along with many other wonders. During the years of war before King Arthur won back Britain for Christianity, the Hallows were not often seen, but as the worship of Christ was restored, they began to appear again. The castle of Carbonek was their chief haunt, and its lord Pels became known as the keeper of the Hallows. The nearness of these holy objects gave men unusual powers, but did not make all men good. Pels was a good man, but he had a brother, Garlon, who was a very wicked man. Garlon was able to make himself invisible, and he used this power to win battles and kill men unfairly. He made himself the terror of the countryside around Carbonek, until one day a knight known as Sir Balin the Savage passed through. Sir Balin was bringing a knight under safe conduct to the king, and as they rode near the town of Carbonek, the knight reeled and fell from his horse. No arrow had flown, and Sir Balin had seen no enemy, but there was a sound of hoofs, and in the chest of the dying man was struck a spear. Sir Balin pulled out the spear and swore to avenge the death of the knight under his protection. He met an old hermit along the road and told him what had happened, and we learned about hermit in our introduction. Hermit is a man who lives alone. The hermit explained that the mysterious murderer must be Garlon, who had the power of invisibility. Sir Balin swore to hunt him down and kill him. Balin soon arrived at the castle of Carbonek, famous for the Hallows, but his mind was not on the Hallows, but on killing Garlon. Balin was well received and taken in to supper. He refused to part with his sword. As he sat eating, he searched the rows of faces intently. "Is there a knight in this court whose name is Garlon?" he asked his neighbor. "There he goes," was the answer, "him with the dark face." Balin drew a deep breath. "Ah," he said quietly. "Is that he?" Garland saw that Balin was watching him and came over and struck Balin on the face with the back of his hand and said, "What are you staring at me for? Eat your food and mind your own business." "You speak good sense," said Balin. "I will mind my business that I came here for." As he rose up and split Garland's head down to the soldiers. And he rose up and split Garland's head down to the shoulders. Then he snatched the spear that had killed the knight and thrust it into Garland's body. At this killing of the lord of the castle's brother, the hall was in uproar. Everyone set on Balin, whose huge figure towered over them all. Pels thrust him all aside and said he would kill his brother's slayer himself. He seized a weapon and at the first blow knocked Balin's sword from his hands, but Balin broke away and ran in search of the new sword. Racing from room to room and finding none, Pels pursued him hotly. Up the winding stairs leaped Balin, and as he ran, the sounds from the hall died away, and there was a deadly quiet, with only the sound of Pels' feet behind him. If only he had a sword in his hand, or even a spear. He flung open a door and stood amazed at what he saw. The room was hung with silks, such as he had never seen. There was a bed covered with a cloth of gold, and a figure stretched silently on it, and a table of pure gold standing on 4 legs of silver, and upon the table was a marvelous shining spear. Balin knew he was in the presence of the Hallows, but the sight of the spear took all thought from him. He seized it and turned on Pels and ran him through the thigh. There was a terrific thunderclap. Pels fell to the ground. Crash followed crash, and the walls and roof of the castle came toppling down. The ceiling of the room fell in and buried both Balin and Pels in the ruins. After 3 days, Merlin came and rescued Balin from the ruins. Merlin told Balin that the wound he had given Pels was a dolorous blow, and that he would suffer for it, for the spear he had used was a spear with which Jesus had been pierced on the cross, and Balin had used a heavenly object for his own earthly needs. Merlin explained that it was Joseph of Arimathea who lay on the bed of gold. Pels was of Joseph's family, and so had become keeper of the Hallows. The presence of the holy objects had preserved the body of Joseph all these years. Until now, the Hallows had kept themselves apart from the world, but Balin had involved the holy spear in an earthly quarrel. The first results had been the wounding of Pels, the destruction of the castle, and a coming of sudden death and disaster over the entire countryside. Merlin told Balin to go away, for no one could heal Pels' wound for the time being. He said that the Hallows would move among men for a time, and men would be tormented by the glimpse of these heavenly objects. But after years of trouble and sorrow, Prince Galahad would come. He would heal Pels' wound and bring the history of the Grail to an end. But until then, there was nothing to do for Pels. Balin reclaimed his sword and went on his way, but he did not live long. That very night he arrived at a castle. He was told that he could ride no farther unless he fought with the knight who lived on a nearby island, and would let no one pass without a challenge. Balin was weary, but he agreed to meet the other knight. He did not know what final grief lay before him. "Sir," said a knight, "your shield is not good. I will lend you a bigger one. Please take it." Balin took the shield, which did not carry his own device, and went on. Device meaning the emblem of a person or place, a coat of arms. When he came to the island, he embarked his horse and himself in a boat and went over the water. Out of the castle came riding a knight, all in red, on a horse with red trappings. Okay, let's go forward. Trappings means a decorated covering and harness for a horse. So a horse with red decorated coverings. It was Balin's brother Balin, who had searched for his brother. He too had been tricked by the people of the castle and had been persuaded to carry a shield not bearing his own device. He looked eagerly at the advancing knight, but when he saw the shield, he knew it was a stranger's. They charged upon each other, the 2 best fighters of the day. At the first shock, they unhorsed each other. Balin, weary with long riding, was badly bruised, and Balin was first on his feet. They drew swords and struck each other with tremendous blows, trampling to and fro until the ground was all mud and blood. Each gave the other 7 great wounds, of which one would have killed any ordinary man. Neither of them had ever met such an enemy. At last the 2 knights collapsed on the ground, mortally wounded. "What is your name?" Sir Balin asked hoarsely, "for until now I have never found any knight who matched me." "My name is Balin, brother to Balin." The word went back black before Balin's eyes. He cried out, "O Balin, my brother, you have slain me, and I you." The two brothers died side by side, Balin first, and then Balin later that night. The next morning Merlin came and took Balin's sword. He told the people of the castle that no one would be able to handle the sword but the best knight of the world, either Sir Lancelot or Sir Galahad, his son. Merlin left the scabbard on the island, and he made a bridge over to it. The bridge was only 6 inches wide, and no man could pass over it unless he was a knight without treachery. So the scabbard was left to await such a finder. Merlin put the sword in a red marble block that floated on water. Merlin then set the enchanted sword on its journey along the waters of Britain until the right man could handle it. Wow, that was intense. A lot of fighting with Balin, and then Balin fighting his own brother Balin. That would be, I don't know, my heart kind of got pulled right there, finding out the brothers were fighting each other. Like, I can't imagine fighting my own brother, not knowing it was him, and then finding out it was. I would be pretty sad. That's kind of a sad way to die, fighting your own brother, not knowing. All right, I think we have just two more chapters, right? 1 second, let's check our library. Whoops, nope. What the table of contents? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 and 6. So 2 more chapters, guys. We are done for today. The marriage of Arthur and the founding of the Round Table. I know one of your study questions is about the Round Table and the importance of it. So try to look for reasons why or how the Round Table was founded and why it's so important. Okay, starting off. King Arthur was now established as King of Britain. However, his law was obeyed only in a small part of his kingdom, because invaders from across the sea held most of it. He had 2 chief cities, Caerleon in Wales and Camelot in the center of southern England. A smaller town was Carbonek on the coast of South Wales. From these castles, Arthur and his knights began to wage war on the invaders, attacking them continually and giving them no peace. For some years after he became king, the fight to restore order in Britain took up all of King Arthur's attention. But gradually he gathered good knights around him, set up a court and a government, and enforced his rule through the entire kingdom. At last there was happiness and order in cottage and castle. The fair-haired lad who had been acclaimed king that summer day in the London churchyard had grown into a bearded man, tall and handsome, stern to wrongdoers, quick and gentle to the good, and to all weaker than himself or to those in any kind of need. All right, you're also going to be tested about the difference between King Arthur when he was young and became king till now, a grown, tall and handsome king. Now his knights begged him to marry and make his court one that would spread gentle manners and courtesy to all people. On one of his adventures, Arthur had met the lady Guinevere, daughter of King Leo de Grance of the land of Camelard. He had never forgotten her, though he had hidden his thoughts in silence. Now he asked Merlin to go with a train of knights to the court of King Leo de Grance to ask for the hand of Guinevere for King Arthur. Here's a picture of King Arthur now, grown, no longer the young 15-year-old. "This is the best news I have ever heard," replied Leo de Grance when he heard the request. "I shall send him a present that will please him, for I shall give him the Round Table that Uther Pendragon gave me. When it is fully seated, it holds 150 knights." Now that is one big table. "I have 100 good knights, but I lack 50, for so many have been killed in the wars." So they made ready for the return journey. When King Arthur heard that Guinevere was coming, his heart was filled with joy. He chose his best friend and chief knight, Sir Lancelot du Lac, to ride to meet her and bring her to Camelot. It was a fine summer morning when the two companies met. Guinevere rode on a white horse, bridled with gold. She was dressed in green and gold, and was more beautiful than any woman in the world. Under a blossoming apple tree she met Sir Launcelot. He was in full armor, but with his visor, a movable part of a helmet that protected the face, so it could move up and down. You probably, if you watched any knight movies, notice the knights when they lift it up so they can see better, and they usually bring it down when they're in battle to protect their eyes and their face. From that moment they loved each other, and Guinevere knew that her new life would be among friends. Oh no. King Arthur wanted Guinevere, but now she's fallen for Sir Launcelot. The mood of the group journeying to Camelot was all gaiety and festive, so happy and upright, just say happy. Every evening the tents were put up in sheltered spot in a wood or valley, and supper was spread on silver dishes on the ground. Just to point out valley really quick, we read about and learned about valley in our science section. The knights and ladies reclined on cushions, while musicians played sweet music under the trees, and a ring of sentries kept guard. Stories were told, or one of the ladies would take a harp and sing. Slowly the light faded, and the stars came out, and everyone retired to their tents to sleep. In the morning there was a bustle of horses and men, of the striking of tents and wagons being packed, and of the entire company would go, chattering and laughing. Sometimes the best route was by water, and when the knights sent barges to meet them, and they went gliding along the river with the notes of the harpers sounding across the water from one barge to another. They arrived at Camelot, which some all Winchester. There Arthur and Guinevere met again under a canopy where the floor was strewn with flowers. The marriage and coronation followed as soon as possible. So coronation meaning the crowning of a king or queen. The round table was set up in the great hall and seats made for it. King Arthur had a plan for this table. He meant to have the knights who sat at it sworn to the highest standard of thought and action. It was to represent a perfect world where love and goodness would spread throughout every vein of life in Britain. When the table was ready, the Archbishop of Canterbury blessed the seats with great ceremony and set each knight in his seat or siege. While this was being done, thunder was heard in the hall, and rolling music. Every man's heart was filled with ease and joy, and the king's face was lit by a heavenly light. When the strange sound ceased, Merlin, standing by the king's chair, said to the new knights, "Sirs, you must all rise and come to King Arthur to do him homage." All right, let's scroll forward and learn what homage is. Homage means deep respect shown in a public ceremony. So he wanted all the knights to come show him respect. So they rose, and while they were kneeling before the king, each man's name magically appeared in letters of gold upon his siege. 3 were left empty, and over one was written, "The Siege Perilous." "What does this mean?" said the king. "Sir," said Merlin, "no man shall sit in those places but the 2 of best fame in any year. But in the perilous siege no man shall sit but one, and if anyone else is so bold as to try to sit there, he shall be destroyed, and he that shall sit there shall have no equal." Next day was the wedding day, and at a great meeting in the morning the king arranged the ranks and grades of all the knights. His nephew Gawain was there, son of his sister Queen Morgause of Orkney. Her husband King Lot had been killed by Pellinore, and she ruled in far off Orkney with her sons Gawain, Gaheris, and Agravain, Mordred, and Gareth. Gawain and Gaheris were attending on King Arthur as his subjects. Gawain was a princely and ambitious knight, while Gaheris as yet was only a squire meaning a knight in training. Pellinore was also at the wedding. He was a friend of Arthur's, now that he had given up his fierce ways and had used his strength to protect the countryside instead of attacking it. Merlin led him to the siege next to the 2 empty ones and the Siege Perilous, and said, "That is your place, for you are most fit to sit here of any that are present." At this Gawain's face darkened. Later he made his way through the knights to the group of squires, and drew Gaheris aside. "That knight is given great honor," he whispered, "which makes me very angry, as he killed our father, so I shall kill him." Do not do it now, said Gaheris, for I am only a squire. But when I am a knight, I shall want revenge on him too. Very well, said Gawain. Here's a picture of Gawain. The knight was unaware that the first split had begun at the very setting up of the table. He had forgotten Merlin's prophecy about the son of his sister, who would destroy the kingdom, and Merlin did not tell him twice. But outwardly all went well. In great splendor the king was married to the Lady Guinevere in the cathedral of St. Stephen in Camelot. Then the king established all his knights. He gave lands to the poor ones and made them an equal fellowship, none above or below his brother. As by the roundness of the table there could be no first seat or last, he gave them all rule of life, to do no murder or evil deed, and to be true to the king, never to be cruel, but to give mercy to anyone who asked, on pain of losing their place in the brotherhood of knights, always to help any woman in any kind of need, and not to take part in an unjust cause for any threat of bribe. All knights of the Round Table swore to keep this rule, and every year they renewed their oath at the feast of Pentecost. So we just kind of learned some points of chivalry, which we learned about in our introduction and prologue. Chivalry, the way that the knights should act, right? To help others, to respect women, to not cause pain to those that did not deserve it. All right, we're starting part 2, the Round Table in action. This is our last chapter for today, chapter 6. The wars were over, but now the harder work began, which was the task of governing the kingdom wisely. The king relied on his knights for help. Success or failure rested on them. So that kind of sounds like the king is using his knights as, as a council. The knights at the Round Table are a council. They're helping the king to govern the land, wisely. Chief of the knights was Sir Lancelot du Lac. He was the son of King Ban of Benwick, which some say was in southwest France. He was called du Lac, meaning of the lake, because it was said that when he was a baby he was stolen by the Lady of the Lake and brought up in her country under the waters of a lake. He had great wealth and lands throughout France. Why he chose to serve King Arthur of Britain instead of the King of France, we do not know. He came in poor clothes as soon as someone unknown and won his fame by his own merits and not on the strength of his family or wealth. Later on his brother Sir Ector followed him, a different Sir Ector from the one who had brought up King Arthur. Sir Lancelot went with King Arthur on a 2-year expedition into France, Italy, and finally Rome, and returned from it the leading knight in the entire country and the king's right-hand man. Here's a picture of Sir Lancelot, the champion knight of the world. No knight had ever defeated him in combat, on horse or on foot. Sir Lancelot was a champion knight of the world. He was the king's friend, and he had sworn a vow of service to the queen. Although he would help any woman, he had sworn to be no other lady's knight but the queen's, and to serve her and the king all his life. Look at that hair and mustache. Maybe I should grow my mustache and hair out like that and become Sir Lancelot. Just kidding. Here's a picture of Sir Lancelot being a baby stolen by the Lady of the Lake. All right, continue to read. Soon after they all came from home from the foreign war, the king gave Sir Lancelot the task of looking after a certain part of the country and seeing that the laws were kept. He was to report on his district to the court at Pentecost. The countryside showed the damage that had been caused by the years of war before King Arthur brought peace to Britain. For many a mile Sir Lancelot could find no castle, farm, or house where he might shelter at night. All was wildness and silence. At last he came upon some plowed land and saw buildings. The house was built inside a protecting wall, with a gate leading and under a storeroom. He was well received by an elderly couple and given food and drink for himself and his steed. When bedtime came, his host led Sir Lancelot to the room over the gate. He put his armor and sword beside him and was soon asleep on a pile of clean straw. Suddenly a violent knocking on the gate below awoke him. He ran to the window, and by the light of the moon saw a knight and 3 more riding down on him. The knight turned to face his pursuers and tackled them bravely. At this, Sir Launcelot quickly put on his armor. He tied his bed sheet to the window and slid down it. To his surprise, he noticed the single knight's shield as the of Sir Kay, the king's steward. He leapt at the 3 knights, and in 7 strokes he beat them all to the ground. Sir Knight, they said, we yield to you as to the champion of unmatched strength. So yielding meaning they give up. He answered, I will not accept your yielding to me. You must yield to this knight, or else I will kill you. Fair knight, we cannot do that, because we would have been beaten that night if you had not come. Well, you can choose whether you will die or live. If you yield, it must be to Sir Kay. So the 3 yielded to Sir Kay, and Sir Launcelot ordered them to go to the court at Pentecost and yield themselves to the mercy of the queen, saying that Sir Kay sent them there as her prisoners. Then Sir Launcelot knocked on the door with his sword. Cautiously, the old couple peeped out through the hatch. To their astonishment, they saw the friendly face of their evening visitor, whom they had last seen going to bed in the gatehouse storeroom. Sir, said the old man, I thought you were in bed. So I was, answered Sir Launcelot, but I got out the window to help an old friend of mine. Then he and Sir Kay were let in, and they all ate and drank again and went to bed in the best of spirits. In the morning, Sir Launcelot got up very early and left Sir Kay sleeping. He took Sir Kay's helmet and shield, leaving his own in their place, said goodbye, and rode off. When Sir Kay awoke and saw the famous shield with the leopards on it, he laughed and said, Now he will upset some of the knights, because they will think he is I, and they will be bold and tackle him. While wearing his helmet and shield, I shall ride in peace. No one will dare to attack me. Here's a picture of Sir Launcelot taking Sir Kay's helmet and shield and leaving his own. So people will think Sir Launcelot is Sir Kay, and they will think Sir Kay is actually Sir Launcelot. Sir Launcelot rode on for several days. He left behind the open country and entered a great forest. He met a lady weeping, who held his bridle and said, On your oath of knighthood, help my brother who is badly wounded. We cannot stop the bleeding. A sorceress living in the castle here told me his wound would never be healed unless I could find a knight who would go into the perilous chapel and find there a sword and a blood-stained cloth that is laid over a wounded knight. A piece of that cloth and the sword would heal my brother if they touched his wounds. This is a strange thing, said Sir Launcelot. What is your brother's name? Sir Melot of Logres. He is a knight of the Round Table, and I will do anything I can do to help him, answered Sir Launcelot. He followed the lady's directions and went through the gloomy woods to the perilous chapel. He dismounted and tied his horse to the gate. As he went into the churchyard, he saw that the wall of the chapel was covered with shields nailed upside down, showing that their owners had been killed. His eye picked out many that he had known well at court in the wars. Sorry, let me read that. His eye picked out many that he had known well at court and in the wars. His face darkened, and suddenly he was aware that below the shields there stood a line of huge armed black figures, taller by 3 feet than any ordinary man, and he realized that these figures had accounted for all the upside-down shields. They made no movement, but a grin of triumph came over each face as they saw another victim approaching. Sir Launcelot felt a throb of terror, but he slung his shield before him and gripped his sword and strode on. When he was only 1 step away from their swords, they suddenly fell back from him. The chapel door was in front of him, and he went in. The door shut behind him, with those huge figures outside, and darkness closed around him. But in a moment he made out a dim light, and going towards it he saw a figure lying under a silk cloth, with a sword beside it. Stooping down, he cut off a piece of silk. He felt the earth quake under him, and again his heart throbbed with fear. Taking the sword, he went down from the chapel and opened the door. There were the grim figures, and as he stepped out, they said, Sir Launcelot, put down that sword, or you will die. Whether I die or live, you shall not get it from me by words or threats. Fight for it if you want it, answered Sir Launcelot. He went straight through them, and not one dared attack him. Outside the churchyard gate a strange lady met him, and said, Sir Launcelot, leave that sword behind you, or you will die. I shall not leave it because of threats, he answered. She replied, if you had left it, you would never see the court or Queen Genevieve. Sorry, let me read that. She replied, if you had left it, you would never see the court or Queen Genevieve again. She asked him to kiss her, and he refused. She broke out in anger and amazed him by saying that all her trouble was for nothing, because she had made this chapel as a trap to catch him, and if he had given way to fear or weakness, he would have fallen under her power, and she would have killed him. But he had defeated all her spells. God preserve me from your cunning, said Sir Launcelot, and he sprang on his horse and rode away. He found Sir Meliot's sister, and they hurried to the castle where Sir Meliot lay, pale and almost dead from bleeding. One touch of the silk and the steel closed his wounds and restored him to health. Great was the joy of the brother and sister, and they did all they could to thank Sir Launcelot. Not only had he saved Sir Meliot's life, but he had broken the power of the sorceress whose spells had caught and killed many good knights. Sir Launcelot told Sir Meliot to come to the court at Pentecost and report to the king all that had happened. Then he continued on his way. His next encounter was with another attempted trick, not of magic this time, but plain murder. As he rode under a castle, he heard falcon's bells over his head. An escaped falcon flew into an elm tree, trailing her long leashes. A falcon is a hawk-like bird trained to hunt small game. They caught in a bough, and as she tried to flutter off, she was jerked back and hung by the legs. Sir Launcelot was wondering how he could help her, when a lady came hurrying out of the castle and called him by name. Sir Launcelot, help me to get my hawk back. If she is lost, my husband will kill me. He is so hasty. As you are a true knight, help me. What is your lord's name? Asked Sir Launcelot, still watching the hawk. Sir Felot, he is a knight of the Lord of the North Gales. Well, madam, said Sir Launcelot, seeing that the hawk was in real danger of hurting herself. As you know my name and appeal to me as a knight to help you, I will try and catch your hawk. But heavens know I am a bad climber, and the tree is very high, and with hardly any boughs to help me. A little reluctant, he dismounted and asked the lady to help him off his armor. He put it on a pile with his arms meaning weapons, and clad only in a shirt and breeches began to climb the elm. He reached the falcon and managed to disentangle the leashes which he tied around a stick, and then he dropped the stick with the struggling hawk attached to it to the ground. Here's a little picture of Sir Launcelot getting the falcon. As soon as the lady had picked up the falcon, an armed man ran out from behind a bush with a drawn sword and shouted, Aha, Sir Launcelot, now I've got you. Sir Launcelot realized that the entire affair had been a trick, and he was caught in his shirt and without a sword. He was in much greater danger than he had been, even from the knights in the enchanted perilous chapel. His eye rapidly reviewed the position of the branches below him and his pile of arms on the ground. Lady, he called, why have you betrayed me? She did as I told her, said Sir Felot. So there is nothing for you, but your time is come, and I shall kill you. You would be shamed forever, an armed knight to kill a defenseless man by trickery. That cannot be helped, answered Sir Felot. Do what you can. You will be forever shamed for this, but at least hang my sword up on a branch so that I can get it, and then kill me if you can. Not I, said Sir Felot. I know you too well. You will get no weapon that I can keep from you. Sir Launcelot began to climb down. On his way, he broke off a tough, spiky branch. Sir Felot watched him, gripping his sword. Sir Launcelot measured the distance from the tree to his horse with his eye and climbed down. Long before Sir Felot expected it, he jumped from the tree to the further side of his horse from the enemy. He had time to scramble to his feet before Sir Felot had run around the horse, and Sir Launcelot leaped on him and smashed the sword out of his hand with his bow, like his branch from the tree. He felled him to the ground, and then, seizing Sir Felot's sword, he cut off his head. The lady screamed, You have killed my husband! I am not to blame, answered Sir Launcelot sternly. You tried to kill me by lies and trickery, and now you have both paid for it. He armed himself as fast as he could, fearing that Sir Felot's soldiers might rush out of the castle on him. He got on his horse and rode away. thanking God that he had escaped the danger. After several other encounters, he arrived back at court 2 days before Pentecost. The king and all the court were very glad. There was laughing and smiling among them, and every now and then the knights who had been taken prisoner came, and Sir Kay and Sir Meliot of Logres arrived, and they all honored Sir Lancelot. Whew. That is the last one, Adriana. I know that was a lot of reading. This was kind of long, but thanks for staying with me, and those that are reading this, I hope you enjoyed following along. That was that was a lot, but a lot of action. It's a pretty cool story. I know that this video is kind of long, but that went by kind of fast for me. But that's it. I need to get ready for open office hours for those that have questions. So if you guys have questions, jump into office hours. We're doing them every Thursday from 12 to 2. So I need to end this stream and get into that. Thanks, Kaden and Adriana, for joining. And those that are watching the replay, hope you enjoyed it. I will see you guys in the next video.